Good evening, I'm Gerg Cahiles sitting in for Pinky Web. Tonight, we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. The 2025 budget may be at risk of being used for political purposes, as the midterm elections will take place this year. To ensure this does not happen, former Senate President Franklin Drilon is suggesting all amendments to the National Expenditure Program be set for later release. Senator Drilon also believes much of what he calls pork remain intact in the 2025 budget. He says the 26 billion pesos vetoed in the DPWH budget is too small, while the veto on unprogrammed funds is cosmetic. Let's get on point with former Senate President Franklin Drilon. Good evening, Senator.
Hi, good evening, Gerg. Thank you for inviting me tonight.
Thank you for joining us tonight, sir. 24 years of experience in the Senate. Highly contested 2025 budget. What can you say about that, sir?
It's the biggest pork barrel that I see now. I handled 24 national budgets, sometimes as a Senate President, other times as Chairman of the Committee on Finance. But this is my own review indicates that about 731.4 billion. I repeat that, 731.4 billion in the 2024 and 2025 budgets are embedded as pork barrel in the two budget years. So as you said at the start of this program, this year is an election year. That is why I have proposed to the DBM that we mark these increases in the National Expenditure Program, sponsored by our good friends in Congress, to be marked for later release. This is not new. This is a practice done. In the past, it was done to harass and to prejudice opposition members like me.
Yes.
But basically, what I am suggesting is, in order to make sure that these funds are not used for political campaigns, for political purposes, that all of these amendments be marked FLR, for later release. Because anyway, under our election laws, you cannot commence a new project 45 days before the election. 100%. And so this is sometime in March. By March, you cannot release any of the budget to launch new programs.
Yes.
There is every reason, therefore, to mark them as for late release items.
So hindi pa sapat itong Omnibus Election Code, sir, yung 45 days. It's not enough.
Well, I can bet you they will antedate all the releases to before the 45-day ban.
Help us understand, sir. Pag sinabing pork barrel, ano po bang ibig sabihin nito?
Ang ibig sabihin ng pork barrel ay yung mga pinasok na mga appropriation na hindi po kasama sa budget na sinusumiti ng Pangulo sa Kongreso. Sa ating sistema, ang Pangulo nagsusumiti ng budget sa Kongreso every start of at about last week of July at para sa susunod na taon. At ito'y pinag-uusapan, 6 na buwan na debate at yung nakalagay doon kung ano yung dapat i-appropriate at kung saan proyekto. Ngayon, ano po ang pork barrel? Ang ginagawa lang ay dinadagdagan po ng mga members of Congress yun pong expenditure program. Let me emphasize, it is not necessarily bad because there are certain needs really for which can be neglected in the course of the submission of the budget. But then it has been abused, and the insertions or amendments are not necessarily related to the economic program of government. But more importantly, in today's practice, the implementation of the pork barrel is highly questionable. There are collusions between those who provide for this funding for this project. There are problems of the contractors colluding with each other so that you don't get the best price. But maybe I should, why is it called pork barrel? It is of American origin. In the start of the democracy in America, the legislators would bring pork to their constituents in a barrel.
Okay.
And that is why it is called pork barrel.
It's like, yung binabanggit nyo, it's like a web of corruption na nakikita natin in the implementation of the pork
In
barrel.
the implementation, yes, I would concur with your description. There is a web of corruption.
All right. So now, sir, in the 2025 elections, 2025 budget, I mean, the issue of insertions during the bicameral committee, conference committee, doon po nagkaroon ng marami no? And highly contested, even their fellow senators, fellow lawmakers, kasi it did not undergo the scrutiny of their fellow lawmakers. What can you say about that, sir?
That's true. But the insertions are not only done during the bicameral conference proceedings. In the course of the budget debates, there are insertions made so that there is a version of the House, there is a version of the Senate, and precisely the bicameral conference committee would try to reconcile these differences. But in the process, nadadagdagan at kaya gets bloated, so that it is our friends in Congress have found a new way of bloating the budget. They move funds, they remove activities from the budget, from the portion of part of the budget which are covered and supported by funds. They remove that, placed it in the unprogrammed funds, where the funding is not certain.
All right. So, mas madali, sir.
Mas madali. Kaya walang check. So, ang aking sinasabi, kung pwede sana, i-release sa publiko, and this is consistent with transparency, release to the public what are the insertions. In other words, how did this, where did this come from? Just release to the public by region, so that the people in the region will know that these are projects which are not included in the National Expenditure Program, originally crafted by the cabinet, and is a insertion or amendment by a member of Congress. Let me emphasize, it is not necessarily true that because it is a pork barrel or insertion or amendment, it is bad. No, I am not saying that.
Okay.
It is, what becomes controversial is in the implementation of the so-called insertions or amendments or additions to the budget.
It's like they're skirting around the procedures or the law, sir, no? Para lang makapagpasok sila ng mas maraming.
No, they're not skirting anything. It's just that, remember that under our system, the Congress has the power of disbursement, of power over the purse, as they would say. And therefore, it is Congress by law and by constitution who has the power to appropriate. But the power to execute, and therefore the power to release the funds appropriated belongs to the President. And therefore, he can exercise that power as done in the last administration, when they mark certain items FLR, for later release.
All right. Since you're talking about the for later release, sir, no po, meron kasing sinasabi yung DBM na FISARO, no? Ang sinasabi po niya, it's for special issuance of special allotment release order, wherein they are the implementing agencies need to comply with certain requirements bago nila i-release yung pondo. What can you say about that, sir?
Tama yan. There is that provision in the budget message, in the veto message. But I challenge them. Have they ever gone through the exercise of checking whether in fact this is happening. In other words, the rule is there. Is it implemented properly? And my answer is no, because the cabinet members would I don't want to use it, but natatakot sila sa Kongreso eh. So, pag sinabing i-release mo yan, di i-release yan ngayon. But for this year, pagkakataon dahilan sa mayroong halalan at nasa ating election code, hindi pwede magkaroon ng bagong programa o proyekto 45 days before the election. And that should fall around first week of March. Now, so what I'm saying is, make it known to the public what are these insertions and mark them all as for later release, so that you don't violate the law by implementing it during the 45 days ban before the election.
Sir, some critics are saying that this 2025 budget is really an election budget. Do you agree?
That's always the case. That's always the case. The budget that is passed during the election year is always called an election budget. And that is why I have proposed that all those budgets which are, all the items which were inserted and not part of the original National Expenditure Program should be marked for later release and should be made public. And therefore you can minimize the electioneering practice. It will happen, but at least when you do this, may takot na baka pahuli.
But hindi naman kaya, sir, makaka-apekto sa ekonomiya natin if may slowdown sa paggastos yung gobyerno?
Maniwala ka sa akin. The government bureaucracy is the most inefficient. And number two, it's just a matter of 45 days. We will not collapse as a country. The economy will not collapse if we postpone new projects for 45 days as provided under the law, or even earlier when we mark, for the sake of transparency, these items as for later release, and also that will comply with the rule of transparency.
All right. We'll have more of our discussion with former Senate President Franklin Drilon after the break. Stay tuned. This is On Point.
Ikaw, Winston, ano nang mga naipundar mo?
Ano ba?
Sorry po, sir. Sorry po.
Kalma lang.
Okay lang.
Mayaman ka.
Laman, tama ka nga sa lahat ng panalo ko. Sa inyo ako nakabingo. At mayaman din ako dahil jackpot ako sa inyo.
The desire to look good, to celebrate our bodies, to proclaim our status through what we wear is not exactly just modern vanity. In fact, I'd like to think it links us to our ancestors, to our indigenous people, to all humanity. But right now, no one can argue that Wang Od is the most effective proponent of Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride.
Magandang gabi, ako po si Pinky Webb.
At ako naman si Corina Sanchez Rojas.
Ngayong 2025, kombinasyong Corina Sanchez Rojas at Pinky Webb. Dalawang mababahayag na subok sa tapang at talino.
Simulcast tayo sa DWAR Abante Radyo at 94.7 Mellow BFM.
Mapapanood din tayo sa Abante Teletabloid sa Sky Cable. Sa bawat issue may anggulo at ang balita may agenda.
Ciao, mabuhay. You are watching The Word Exposed.
Prepare our hearts as we dive deeper into our faith and receive the strength from God's Word. Join Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle as he shares the reflection we need for the rest of the week.
We pray that the Word of God would find fulfillment in your life and His blessings be always upon you.
Every Sunday, 7 a.m. with replays at 3 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching On Point. Still with us, former Senate President Franklin Drilon. Sir, the question is, can we control the Congress from putting pork barrel sa budget ng bansa?
You cannot. But precisely under our system, in a democratic system, you generate public opinion if the public opinion can be generated against the pork barrel system. But that is how it works. In our system of government, there is separation of powers, and check and balance. The Congress appropriates, the President executes. So can it be prevented? Realistically, no. Because this is the nature of a good democratic system. And by the way, that is not our monopoly. The oldest bureaucracy is the America pork barrel system, called by any name, is still pork barrel, but it exists. What is important is that in the implementation of the pork barrel, you follow the rules so that you, for example, a source of corruption in the pork barrel system is the priority, is whether or not a project is needed. Number two, whether or not the bid is proper. So it cannot be, the pork barrel, I will repeat, is not necessarily bad. It is in the implementation of the projects that must be watched.
You're challenging the DBM to publish all the insertions, all the pork barrel projects. This is somehow a sense of transparency in the government, sir. But how can we further improve transparency when they don't even want to pass a law about freedom of information?
Well, that is part of our continuing struggle. We should not give up. If we believe it is right, certain sectors of society should keep on fighting for it. In the same manner that you can cite other mandates of the Constitution which are not carried out because of lack of any legislation.
Last night, sir, we spoke with Baguio City Mayor Benji Magalong, and he described the 2025 budget as an election budget, as I mentioned earlier. And he, along with our 200 retired police and military personnel, wrote an open letter to the President because they said that the GAA 2025 is not responsive to the people's needs. So here's a portion of this interview, sir.
Kuminsan nakakahingi ako ng konting akap, pero hindi kasing laki ng akap na nakukuha ng mga lawmakers. Napakarami nilang ibinibigay. Ganon din sa ibang mga locality kasi nag-uusap naman kami ng mga ibang mayors. Ganon din ang kanilang observation. Kung mamigay sila, akala mo pera nila.
Your reaction to that, Senator?
I'm sorry.
Ang sabi po niya, yung mga lawmakers, kung umasta, namimigay ng pera, parang sa kanila yung pera.
Hindi tama yan. Dahilan sa ito'y talaga pera ng taong bayan. Ito siguro kine-question yung mga whatever you call
AKAP, sir, yes.
AKAP, etc. There are always two sides of the debate. What is being done on, is distributing cash to the poor sector so that they can purchase goods which will generate economic activity. That's one way of looking at it.
Yes.
And I think that's the theory. Remember, President Pinoy started the 4-piece program.
Correct.
And the 4-piece program is of the same nature, except that there are conditions imposed in the 4-piece program, which is now in the law. So, there are conditions that must be fulfilled when you become a recipient of what's called dolouts. Let's call it the dolouts. But there are conditions. The problem is when these conditions are not followed, and when a member of Congress or a mayor or a governor would call or would submit his list of who should be entitled. Yes. And therefore, again, it's in the implementation of the program. The program is good intention. There are other countries in South America who would have similar programs. Because there are benefits, you give it to the poor, you alleviate their hunger, and when they use the money, you perk up the economy. But again, it's in the implementation which raises issues and doubts, particularly when the congressman or the senator or the mayor or the governor would submit his list of the so-called poor. So that is where the problem lies.
In your 24 years, sir, in the Senate, na-experience ba yung mga LGU lumalapit sa inyo asking for help? Tulungan niyo naman ako magkaroon ng ganitong budget, etc.
Yes. That's very common, and that's accepted practice in a democracy. For example, you know where the word lobby comes from?
Yes, sir.
Lobby comes from the British Parliament, where the constituents would go to a lobby and wait for their representatives. That is why it's called lobby. But I have experience. Mayors coming to me says, "Sir, I need a farm to market road." That's common. At the back of my mind, telling them, so you need a farm to pocket road, not market, farm to pocket. So what I did, I had a school program, a school building program, together the Federation of Philippine Chinese Federation of Commerce and Industry, wherein we built school buildings and school rooms at half the cost of what government contractors were doing. So when the mayor comes to me asking for a farm to pocket road, I said, no, I will give you a school room. Your name will be there. So that's how I was able to go around that difficulty.
Sir, speaking of schools, in the 2025 budget, malaki rin yung binawas, yung slash sa DepEd budget, DOH, even PhilHealth got zero for this year. What can you say about that, sir?
Well, as a policy, it's wrong. And under the Constitution, education is given the highest priority. So that is why suddenly you hear the government saying that, yes, the education budget is the biggest, including the budgets that is for the Philippine Police Academy, the Philippine Military Academy, etc., etc. To me, that was not the original purpose of the constitutional framers when they said education should be given the biggest, the highest priority. Which really means formal education of our youth, not the training. So to me, that's wrong. And
PhilHealth, sir.
PhilHealth was funded in great part by the sin tax law, and I wrote the sin tax law. And under the sin tax law, 80%, if I recall correctly, of the taxes collected from vices, meaning cigarette, liquor, should go to PhilHealth. Now, therefore, and so since the law already said that 80% should go to health sector, it is questionable for the Congress to withhold allocation because that is in effect amending the sin tax law. So it is correct to have this decided by the Supreme Court.
So you agree, sir, that dapat talaga dalhin sa Supreme Court itong usaping ito?
Yes, I agree because in particular this PhilHealth funds transfer is already in the Supreme Court because the administration is claiming that they can augment, the president's power can augment certain items in the budget. On the other hand, those who are opposed to this freezing of or depriving the PhilHealth of funds says these are not your funds. These are funds allotted to the PhilHealth program.
Sir, whenever the annual budget is being questioned before the Supreme Court, is there an effect to its usage? Pwede bang galawin ng gobyerno yung pera kung kina-question pa ito sa Supreme Court?
Yes, unless there is a restraining order issued by the Supreme Court. You can, the mere fact that the case is pending does not necessarily prevent the action to be taken unless a temporary restraining order is issued. So in answer to the question, yes, it can still be used.
Sir, can you talk more about the budget increase naman sa DPWH, sa Senate, and House? This is talagang malaki din yung budget increase. Talagang lumobo po. Ano?
Okay. The favorite recipient of pork barrel is DPWH.
Okay.
That is why you can see year in and year out that the biggest allocation of pork barrel or increases in the budget is with DPWH. And that is where the many problems arise in the implementation, in the collusion, it is not necessarily the best deal for government. So we have noted that in this year's budget, the DPWH budget was increased by the BICAM, something like, I can't remember exactly how much it is, but the DPWH budget was enlarged by some substantial billions of pesos. The president said he vetoed 26 billion.
Yes.
But if I recall correctly, the total budget is over 200 billion addition. In other words, over 200 billion in pork barrels under the DPWH budget. So 26 billion as a veto is insignificant.
What do you think happened, sir? Anong nangyari doon? Kasi supposedly, sabi nila, pag-aaralan nila yung budget, and yet, parang konti lang yung tinanggal, halos hindi nga napakialaman. What do you think happened there, sir?
We need a day to discuss that because a lot of things happen inside. I'm not privy to it, but it is not unusual that lobbies will take place with government officials lobbying with the DBM not to veto. But it's important that the public should be informed, and the public, and I tell you, the cabinet listens to media, to reasonable proposals in media, and this is part of the process. What do you think happened? I do not know what happened, but it is not unusual that there would be lobbies, there will be exchanges in political favors. I mean, that's given in our democratic system.
Okay, sir. Before we finish our discussion, sir, kasi nga itong AKAP naman, sir, this dole out na binabanggit na for minimum wage earners, tinanggalan na ng Kongreso ng budget yan, pero pinasok pa rin sa BICAM.
Now, the BICAM can do anything. It is called the third house of Congress because they're supposed to reconcile the disagreeing provisions, disagreeing versions of the House and the Senate. So there is legally, it can be done. Whether or not it's the correct policy is another question. So AKAP as an item of the budget can be reviewed, can be increased, can be removed, can be decreased in the BICAM. Legally, there's nothing wrong with that. But of course, whether or not it is proper or the correct thing to do as a matter of policy is another question.
Again, sir, the implementation, something that we should watch out for. We should be more very keen on checking these things, and we hope that the government will be more transparent in their
That's correct,
spending.
and we'll listen to public opinion.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator Drilon, for your time. And that's On Point. Join us again next week at 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionaire News Channel. On behalf of Pinky Web, I'm Gerg Cahiles. Thank you for watching.